But what's clear is a mess has been left. And it's a state that, has been reliably blue for a number of cycles now. But Susan Collins managed to survive. What is your sense here as to what the Dems need to do? What kind of candidate they need to pick to have a shot to win?
Well, it is incredibly complicated, and I've said here before, Susan Collins, as much as Democrats want to beat her, has been a very, very strong candidate for cycle after cycle. She has been very difficult to beat because she knows the state very well, and she's generally represented it well. I think the issue now is that whoever they get is going to have a level of scrutiny that is, off the charts, as should have happened with Plattner, and it's incredibly difficult to catch up. They have a very short frame.
So, Lauren, you have a piece for Notice that just posted about this race and what you think some of the conclusions have been reached incorrectly. Tell us about it.
Well, so look, everyone and their cousin in the last few days has had an opinion on the Plattner race, suddenly saying that they thought all along he shouldn't have been in the race. I mean, it's just like so little too late. And one of the takes that I have not seen anywhere was really my experience, which is that here on the show and then in my own social media, I called on Plattner to drop out over a month ago. And when I did, I was hit with a barrage of absolutely virulent anti-Semitism. I was accused of being a shill for Israel. I was told that I must be in the pocket of AIPAC and that was the only reason why I opposed Plattner. He had a deep bench of ultra-lefty supporters who believed that this was a conspiracy orchestrated by Israel and Jews to defame him, rather than looking at the very plain evidence that he had some really serious character issues. And those were the things that I called out. And the reason why I think this is important to highlight is because Plattner himself, in his sort of very defensive video the other day, is continuing to blame this sort of idea of there's a vast conspiracy to take him out, rather than taking responsibility for his behavior. And that is what I saw from his supporters. The level of hate, the very specific hate that accused me of being in the pocket of Israel because I thought someone who was abusive to women and had a Nazi tattoo on his chest wasn't appropriate for the United States Senate, was shocking to me.
Well, certainly unacceptable anti-Semitism in any way. The new piece is available on Notice now, but you're right. I mean, Israel is going to be a flashpoint for this election, both for Democratic primaries and also for the general in November. So, Reb, let's set that aside for the moment and talk about, Plattner did have an appeal for all of his flaws, and there were clearly many. He did electrify sort of grassroots voters, progressives and the like. He garnered real enthusiasm. And part of what Democrats in Maine are going to have to do now is try to, whoever their candidates end up being, try to still connect with those voters who were excited, some for the first time, excited to vote for Plattner.
We should not ignore that he had an appeal on issues that resonated. We should not appeal that even when some of the early negative things came out about him, people stuck with him anyway. But he inevitably had to withdraw based on what kept coming. Let's not forget some of his major supporters, Bernie Sanders and others, called on him to withdraw. So it had nothing to do with the fact that people had foresight and said earlier. What I would look for, though, is whoever the Democrats choose to run. I ran for president once. What I would say is, fine, we asked our guy to step aside, but you have a sitting president convicted of sexual harassment. And this week, it was ordered to pay $5 million to a victim. Yep. So we showed more of a standard than you have. You want to really have this debate? I would turn it back on the Republicans. We act like we do not have a glaring example of somebody that was accused of sexual misbehavior and was found to be guilty by a jury in a court. That is what they ought to be running against Susan Collins. Are you denouncing Donald Trump like we made Plattner step aside?
Yeah, Trump found liable this week, still saying he'll appeal that $5 million award to E. Jean Carroll. So from Maine to Iowa, David Drucker, Maine has all along been seen as a Democrats are pretty optimistic about a pickup chance because, again, Maine has, despite the Collins exception, Maine is a state that's gone very blue in recent decades. Iowa, though, has gone the other way in the Trump era. It's become reliably red. But this race may be different. Tell us what you're finding on the ground there in Iowa.
Right, so I'm in Northwest Iowa, which, whatever the darker shade of red is for red, that's Northwest Iowa, very conservative socially and otherwise. And I've been spending time with Rob Sand, who's the Democratic nominee for governor. And it's really sort of the flip side of what a populist campaign could look like that doesn't claim that there are evil, dark forces rigging elections and rigging nominations and rigging votes. He doesn't talk about foreign policy issues. He doesn't blame anything on AIPAC. And in fact, what he does at his town hall meetings, I was at 3 of them yesterday, is he goes after both parties, but for not doing the job that it is available for them to do under a system that he said works. It's just the people that are within the system that are not doing what they're supposed to do. And really interesting, Jonathan, he asks Republicans, independents, and Democrats to raise their hand, and they kind of look at him at first. And he's like, look, we need to all get along and not be suspicious of each other. And that's why I'm doing this. And once he knows who the Republicans are in the crowd, once it comes time for Q&A, he gives them the first question, and he wants to have a conversation. It's so different than what I've seen from some of these other Democratic populists. Now, obviously, different states, different voting pools will demand different kinds of candidates. But this is the sort of Democratic campaign that I think can win in a red state. It acknowledges the politics. He still has areas of disagreement with the majority of voters here in Iowa. He acknowledges them up front. He tells them where he's coming from. He tells them why. And I think it's the sort of politics that doesn't have to feel as though it's divisive and dark, which has just made it interesting to cover, because whether you're on the right covering Republican primaries or the left with a lot of the Democratic primaries that I have been covering, not to mention these general elections, I don't often see a politics like this.
And Democrats growing more optimistic about both the Senate and gubernatorial races there in the Hawkeye State. All right, everybody stay put. We've gone from Maine to Iowa. Next up.